Hey, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about avoidance, and avoidance is it's going to topic all of them. I have a lot of notes on this topic, so I also have a longer version for you on the podcast, and that way you don't see me looking at my notes all the time because that's super silly. But what I want to do is a quick recap here, and then you can have the longer version in audio. But again, avoidance. And sometimes avoidance looks like a lot of things. Sometimes avoidance is just us being grumbly and whining and kind of making a fuss, but it's really opting out when we start to look at that. But avoidance from other people can also be like when you see people start to nitpick, when they start to kind of like just peck at you, peck at an idea or peck at something, and you're just like, stop. So many times I will see people peck at their own future because they're avoiding something. And remember, avoidance is always one thing, and that is, right, that healing is calling, that we are looking for relief, mending. We're looking for some sort of curative option of, I don't want to do that. Okay, and so sometimes that's not avoidance, right? Saying I'm not going to do something isn't avoidance. That's actually stating I'm not going to do something. That's a decision. Avoidance is when you're like, yeah, I'll get to that. Okay, I'm not going to make an opinion. I'm not going to, right? Avoidance is that wriggling, it's ducking and dodging. So when you are saying, hey, I'm not going to do something, that's not ducking and dodging. That's saying I'm not going to do that. So when we start to look at avoidance, we see it in all of these. I'm in the Midwest, in the United States. So we have something here called passive aggressive. So you see people who don't really tell you their truth, that they just sort of quash something, or they'll give you a backhanded remark. And if you are doing that, avoidance, you should kind of look at that, right? So sometimes you see people who kind of hyper criticize, that they are right, nitpicking, or you'll maybe get into a funk. What does avoidance look like? It is also mandating that things go a certain way, that they also, avoidance is also sometimes containment of, I can only have this, it can only be this way. And it can also be cutting off swaths of emotion because they're not safe. When we look at avoidance, it's sometimes we don't want to change our pattern, but sometimes it's just, again, avoidance is a really effective tool. First of all, I don't mind avoidance. Avoidance is not a bad thing, um, unless it becomes a bad thing. But avoidance, why do we avoid? We avoid because it's effective. It's designed to not put us into a situation where we're going to have more vulnerability or more trauma. So when you start to realize that, like, wow, what is up with the way I'm feeling here? It is a way for you to avoid, to bypass these other emotions, and that might be grief, it might be loneliness, it might be shame, it might be just risk aversion. It can be a lot of things. So when you're avoiding, remember, it's effective until it's not. Avoiding only works until it doesn't. And so it's an effective tool. We can, sometimes we get to avoidance because it is also our way to kind of hide our own truth from ourselves. But the fact of the matter is that when you get there and you decide that avoidance is okay until it isn't, when we're at the isn't moment, now we got to break it out. Now we got to kind of step up and go, oh, I need a plan, I need a strategy. And that is, right, that we have to now start to talk down the monsters in our head, because they've been released. They're out there. They're doing it, right? And emotions fight back. So if you've been avoiding looking at a situation or dealing with some of the things that are hard for you in your life, there's a reason you avoided them, because there's a confrontation of some sort that's going to happen in there for you. And that's really looking at the monsters that are there. Are they even real? And so that's also mind over mood. And it's really looking to enlist a friend. I love enlisting a friend. It's breaking your routine. It's looking at, um, kind of what is there. And you will often hear this from me from other classes, is that wherever the camp is of of something that you are not enjoying, whatever that camp is, in the same campsite is the antidote. So the antidote is always in the same campsite. So um, if you are someone who perhaps looks at this in auras, I mean, or in an energetic standpoint, the opposite of that energy is true, right? So when we look at pairing, how do we get through something? Is we go, oh, well, the energy of this has an opposition, right? Which is also the antidote. So whatever the poison is, there's always an antidote, and it's usually just on the opposite side of that spectrum. So you get to curate some ideas for yourself, and you get to kind of go, oh, okay, well, let me look at what I'm avoiding. What's the camp? What is that? So that might be anger. My avoidance might look like I'm grumbly, I'm whiny, I groan, I moan, I bark, rah, 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 right? Okay, if that's really how my avoidance is showcasing, what's the opposite of that? And I can kind of start to get to that point to go, oh, well, I can choose not to be grumbly. I can choose to not be, I can choose to be quiet about my moaning or my fussing or whatever, right? And or getting into a funk, right? It's neglect. So the opposite of neglect might be to actually take care. And so it's when you start to curate your options, I would just go, look, is this helpful? Is it useful? And give it some time limits. So the time limit would be, is this helpful? Is this useful? Do I need it now? So as you're curating your thoughts on avoidance to go, is it helpful to avoid? No. Okay, well, why, right? Okay, is it useful? Is there what was something useful I can do? And you start kind of balancing these things out. When we look at this again from a prosperity mindset, you're trying to create more of what you want. And by creating more of what you want, it just makes it so that the other things get pushed away. And that's super, super helpful. So when you're thinking about avoidance, you're looking for things that are constructive and that are constructive in the way to give you some sort of mending, that it's there to give you options in your processing. And again, avoidance is effective until it's not. And avoidance isn't in and of itself a bad thing. Avoidance is a helpful tool, but when it is a tool that is misused or overplayed, it's not going to go well. So, and that's really why avoidance comes up, is that people start going, oh, why am I avoiding? And why am I avoiding might be these other things. So what I'm inviting all of you to rethink is that avoidance is actually a cue to you that there's healing that's available for you that you can start to partake in. So I would not look at avoidance as anything other than a cue that says, oh, I should probably look at why I'm avoiding that. And what is the emotion that I was trying to not feel? So sometimes I avoid doing something because I don't want to feel a certain way, or I have grief, or I have pain, or I have anxiety, or I have hurt, or I have trauma, or I feel vulnerable, or that feels risky, right? There's a lot of reasons we avoid and a lot of good ones. So now we go, okay, well, I don't need to avoid this anymore. So what's the antidote? The antidote is always constructive, right? It's always enlisting the parasympathetic system. It is a corrective kind of item. So when you are looking for the parasympathetic, it's really breathing, practice breathing, and then really bring your not reactions to it, but bring your resolve to say, oh, okay, how would I resolve this? Not just how am I reacting to it, but how am I resolving it? And that will give you just a little bit there. This is really helpful. I have a journal with this in it. That when I talk about this in general, I usually do it on audio because there's so much topic in here. But there's also for you so much opportunity. And so I would get a journal and I would start kind of just thinking about the things that you're avoiding, and then just think about them and write them on the list, and then start really assigning, like, what camp are they in? What's the avoidance? What's the emotion I'm trying to avoid? And one of the things that a lot of people avoid is meeting new people. And meeting new people is that they have a lot of feelings that they're trying to not have face them. And so that's a really good one. If you are someone who is lonely, it is an effort to be not lonely. And sometimes we are lonely and there's thousands of people around us. That means that you might not be just lonely, that you may not feel satisfied in the intimate relationships that you have. So in a prosperity mindset, what we're going to look at is, okay, well, what's the antidote? If this is the campsite that my pain is in, so is the same campsite. The opposite of that is also the antidote of that poison in my life. So anyway, think about this as kind of an afternoon. It's a great kind of out on a sunny day kind of space, and I would give yourself the space to really be generous to yourself. So I would make yourself comfortable. I would take the time to be in something cozy and just go, let me take the early morning moment and get my courage up and really look at, here are all the things that I'm avoiding, and really start to find out why. And what I have found from doing this for so many years with people is that the things that they're avoiding, about 70% of the things that you are avoiding actually have a solve that's really accessible. And when you stay open and willing to the fact that you're ready to do that, it will just do it. But it will not move if you don't actually find the emotion that's hiding, that doesn't want to, that's just not worked out. So remember, emotions have that, they have a lot of energy to them. And so when we start to tackle these bigger questions, you'll just want to give yourself a little room to kind of dance around with the ideas. So again, avoidance, reprogram it. It's a cue. It's a cue that healing is calling. And then we just get to take a little time and just maneuver that. It is, uh, I, I like avoidance because it really does give me a minute to go, ooh, why am I doing that? And I hope it does that for you too, as opposed to just making you kind of crabby. And a lot of times people who are nitpicky and crabby are avoiding a whole bunch of other issues. And those issues are really around emotions that they don't want to do. It's not always that they lack integrity and are creepy. It is because they got some work to do. And for you doing your own work, be nice, be playful, be thoughtful, be colorful. You know, draw it out, do anything you can, but just get through to those ideas for yourself. All right, be well. Have a great day, and I will see you soon.